"Don't touch me there." She wept. The rancher reached out, and then collapsed. Wild West stories. She took a deep breath, feeling the dry, sharp wind against her face. This was the first time she had been so far from home, so far from the small town where she had grown up surrounded by familiar faces and familiar routines. She had heard stories of the Wild West, the lawless stretches of land, the wild animals, and the people who lived here, strong and unyielding. But she had never truly imagined what it would feel like to stand in the middle of it all, with only the sound of the wind and the distant lowing of cattle. She glanced toward the ranch in the distance. Its wooden fences stretched across acres of land, some posts leaning slightly from years of harsh weather. A few horses grazed near the stables, their tails flicking lazily as they shooed away flies. Beyond them, the main ranch house stood tall, its stone chimney releasing a thin trail of smoke into the sky. Clara's heart beat faster. She had written to the ranch owner weeks ago, offering her services in exchange for room, board, and a small wage. Now, standing at the edge of this vast, untamed land, she wondered if she had made the right choice. She began walking along the narrow dirt path leading to the ranch, each step stirring small clouds of dust. The ground was uneven, dotted with small stones and tufts of dry grass. She had always been a cautious girl, careful with her steps, careful with her words, but life had forced her to be brave. Her family needed her help, and work at the ranch promised a way to send money back home. Clara tightened her grip on her bag and tried to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach. As she approached the main house, a man stepped out onto the porch. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of years under the sun. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but there was a hint of kindness in the way he observed her. This was Samuel, the ranch owner. He gave her a nod, not a smile, and Clara hurried forward, unsure whether she should introduce herself first or wait for him to speak. "Clara?" he asked, his voice steady, calm, yet carrying authority. "Yes, sir, I'm Clara. I wrote about helping on the ranch," she replied, keeping her voice polite, trying to hide the trembling she felt in her hands. Samuel studied her for a moment, then nodded again. "All right. We could use another pair of hands, but I warn you, it's not an easy life here. The land is harsh, the work is harder, and you need to follow instructions carefully. Can you handle that?" Clara nodded firmly. "Yes, sir, I can handle it." He motioned for her to follow. "Good. Then let's see what you can do. First, I'll show you the chores." As they walked across the yard, Clara took in her surroundings. The ranch was a world of its own, with barns, pens, and paddocks spread across acres. Chickens clucked near the henhouse, pigs snorted in their pen, and cows lazily wandered the open field. There was a small creek running along the edge of the property, its water sparkling in the late afternoon sun. Clara felt a mix of awe and anxiety. This was not the neat, orderly life she had known. Here, everything depended on hard work, quick thinking, and courage. Samuel began assigning her tasks. She was to feed the animals, clean the stables, help mend fences, and assist with the daily chores that kept the ranch running. At first, Clara struggled. The animals were larger and heavier than she expected, and the tools were rough and unwieldy, but she refused to give up. Each day she learned something new: the way to calm a frightened horse, the rhythm of milking cows, the technique of tightening a stubborn fence post. She watched Samuel closely, trying to anticipate his instructions and understand the rhythm of ranch life. Despite the hard work, Clara found small moments of beauty and joy. She loved the early mornings when the sky glowed pink and gold, the quiet times by the creek, and the way the land seemed alive with the hum of nature. She began to feel a connection to the ranch, a sense that this challenging life could also be rewarding. But she could not ignore the tension she felt around Samuel. He was strict, his gaze often sharp, and Clara sometimes felt the weight of his expectations pressing down on her. She wanted to impress him, to earn his respect, but she was careful to keep her distance, uncertain of his intentions. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Samuel approached her with a serious expression. "There's a heavy gate that needs fixing near the north pasture. I want you to help me with it," he said. Clara nodded and followed him. The gate was large and stubborn, its hinges squeaking in protest as they tried to lift it. Samuel reached out to guide her hand, and Clara instinctively stepped back. "Don't touch me there," she said firmly, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and frustration. Samuel froze, his hand still in the air. He looked at her, surprised, then quickly withdrew it. I'm sorry, Clara, I didn't mean." Clara took a deep breath, calming herself. "It's all right. I just need to do it myself," she said, forcing a smile. Samuel nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Fair enough. I'll step back, but if you need help, ask." Clara appreciated his response. There was a moment of tension, yes, but also a subtle understanding forming between them. She realized that the ranch was not just about physical strength. It was also about respect, trust, and knowing one's boundaries. She felt a quiet sense of relief that Samuel had listened and respected her words. The next few days were a mix of learning, labor, and small victories. Clara began to feel more confident in her abilities. She could ride a horse without fear, repair fences without struggling, and navigate the sprawling ranch with growing ease. She noticed the changing seasons, the way the light shifted across the fields, and how the animals responded to care and attention. Life was not easy here, but it was honest, and Clara found herself slowly adapting to the rhythm of ranch life. By the end of her first week, Clara felt a mixture of exhaustion and pride. She had faced the unknown and survived, learning not only the practical skills of ranch work, but also important lessons about courage, patience, and respect. She began to see Samuel in a different light, not just as a strict and intimidating man, but as someone who had built this ranch with hard work, determination, and care. As night fell, Clara sat outside the small cabin she was given, looking up at the stars. The sky seemed endless, filled with countless points of light that twinkled against the deep blue of night. She thought of her family back home, of the sacrifices they had made, and of the journey that had brought her here. She felt a sense of purpose, a determination to prove herself not just to Samuel, but to herself as well. Though the Wild West was harsh and unpredictable, Clara realized that she had the strength to face its challenges. She was no longer just a girl from a small town. She was becoming a part of this rugged land, learning its lessons and discovering her own resilience. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the days ahead would test her even more, but she was ready to meet them head-on. With that thought, she stood and stretched, feeling the cool night air on her skin. Tomorrow would bring new tasks, new lessons, and perhaps new challenges with Samuel. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. She had arrived at the ranch. She had faced her fears, and she had taken the first steps into a life that was completely her own. And somewhere in the distance, the ranch seemed to acknowledge her presence, the lowing of cattle, the rustling of leaves, and the faint creak of the old wooden fences forming a quiet symphony of life, welcoming her to the wild, untamed heart of the West. Clara woke early the next morning, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the small window of her cabin. The smell of dew and fresh grass filled the air, and she could hear the soft lowing of cows and the occasional neigh of a horse. Life on the ranch had already begun to feel like a rhythm, a constant push and pull between work and survival, between the harshness of the land and the beauty it held. She dressed quickly, tying her hair back with a simple ribbon, and stepped outside, determined to face another day with courage. Samuel was already in the yard, checking the fences near the north pasture. When he saw her, he gave a small nod, acknowledging her presence without saying much. Clara walked toward him, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. The previous evening's incident with the gate still lingered in her mind. She had been shaken, but Samuel's quick understanding and apology had left her feeling cautiously hopeful. Perhaps he could be trusted, she thought. Perhaps this ranch could become more than just a job. It could be a place where she proved her own strength. "Morning," Samuel said, his voice calm but firm. "Today we need to move the cattle to the eastern pasture. It's a long day and you'll need to stay alert." Clara nodded. "Yes, sir, I'm ready." The work began immediately. The cattle were restless, sensing the movement from one pasture to another. Clara followed Samuel closely, trying to anticipate his movements and instructions. The animals were unpredictable, and one moment of hesitation could send them in the wrong direction. Clara found herself relying on every lesson she had learned the day before: how to position herself, how to guide the cattle with gentle pressure and careful gestures, and how to keep her fear from showing. Samuel occasionally shouted directions, his voice carrying across the field. "Left, keep them moving." Clara felt her heart pound, but she obeyed, pushing through the dust and heat. The work was exhausting, far beyond anything she had done before, but with each successful maneuver, she felt a small surge of pride. She was learning quickly, and though the day was only beginning, she sensed her own resilience growing. By midday, the sun was high, burning hot against their skin. Clara wiped the sweat from her forehead, her arms aching from guiding the cattle and lifting gates. She glanced at Samuel, who was overseeing the herd with practiced ease. He moved with a quiet authority, calm even in the chaos, and Clara couldn't help but feel a mixture of admiration and intimidation. The rancher was a man of experience, shaped by years under the unforgiving sun and the demands of the land. She wondered if she could ever reach that level of confidence and skill. As the herd finally settled into the eastern pasture, Clara allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. She leaned against the fence, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Samuel approached her, his steps deliberate. "You're doing well," he said, his tone neutral but carrying an unmistakable weight of approval. "But remember, cattle don't respond to hesitation. You have to be firm and confident even if you feel unsure inside." Clara nodded, taking his words to heart. "I understand, sir. I'll try to remember." He studied her for a moment longer, then moved on to check the fences along the boundary. Clara took this opportunity to observe her surroundings. The eastern pasture stretched far and wide, dotted with wildflowers and the occasional tree offering shade. The land was beautiful, even harsh and demanding as it was. She realized that every task she completed here connected her more deeply to this place. Each fence mended, each animal guided, each gate lifted was a small victory, proof that she belonged here, at least in part. Later that afternoon, Samuel called her over to help with repairing a section of the corral. The wood was old and splintered, and the nails stubbornly refused to stay in place. Clara knelt beside him, trying to hammer a post straight, but it kept bending to one side. Samuel noticed and stepped forward, reaching out to adjust her grip. Clara's heart leapt, the memory of the previous evening flashing through her mind. She froze for a moment, remembering her warning, and then stepped back slightly. Samuel noticed her hesitation immediately. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently. "I just want to help." "But I'll respect your space." Clara took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you, sir. I'll try it myself first." He smiled faintly, a rare softness crossing his stern features. "Good. Independence is important here, but know that help is always available if you need it." Working side by side, they slowly repaired the corral. The afternoon passed with the steady rhythm of hammering, sawing, and arranging posts. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Clara felt a sense of accomplishment. Not only had she completed the task, but she had also navigated the delicate balance of asserting her boundaries while accepting guidance. It was a lesson in more than just ranch work. It was a lesson in trust and mutual respect. That evening, after the work was done, Clara helped prepare the animals for the night. She fed the chickens, ensured the horses had water, and checked the cattle one last time before heading back to her cabin. The sky was painted with deep reds and purples, and the wind carried the faint scent of earth and grass. She paused for a moment, letting herself absorb the peace that followed the day's labor. Life on the ranch was hard, yes, but it was also honest and real. As she settled into her small bed that night, Clara reflected on the day. She had faced challenges, moments of fear and physical exhaustion, yet she had also felt moments of triumph and connection. Samuel's presence, though intimidating at times, had taught her patience and resilience. She realized that the tension between them was not hostility, but the natural friction that came from two strong individuals learning to work together. The following days continued in much the same way: early mornings, long hours, and constant lessons in both ranch work and life. Clara learned to ride faster, guide cattle with a gentle authority, and anticipate the needs of the animals and the ranch. She and Samuel developed an unspoken communication, a rhythm of gestures and glances that made their work more efficient. And though Clara remained cautious, wary of overstepping boundaries, she also began to recognize Samuel's genuine fairness and respect for those who worked alongside him. One afternoon, as they were mending fences near the far edge of the property, a sudden commotion arose among the cattle. A young calf had wandered too close to the creek and seemed unable to find its footing on the muddy bank. Clara froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Samuel reacted quickly, moving to steady the calf and guide it back to solid ground. Clara followed his lead, carefully positioning herself to help without causing further distress. The calf finally regained its footing, and both Clara and Samuel breathed a sigh of relief. Clara felt a rush of pride, knowing she had played a role in saving the animal. Samuel glanced at her, his expression unreadable for a moment, then nodded. "You're learning fast. That's good. Keep paying attention, keep thinking ahead, and you'll do fine." Clara smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that despite the challenges, she was growing stronger, more capable, and more confident in her abilities. The ranch, with all its hardships, was teaching her lessons she had never imagined she could learn. And though Samuel could be strict and imposing, she began to see him not just as a boss, but as a teacher and a guide, someone whose experience and wisdom were invaluable in this harsh environment. By the end of the week, Clara had settled into a routine. She woke with the sun, worked tirelessly throughout the day, and found moments of quiet reflection in the evenings. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was becoming a home of sorts, a place where she could test her strength, learn new skills, and discover her own resilience. And though the tension of the past lingered slightly, it was tempered by growing respect, understanding, and the shared goal of keeping the ranch running smoothly. As night fell and Clara lay in her cabin, she could hear the distant calls of animals settling for the night and the whisper of wind through the trees. She thought about the days ahead, knowing that challenges and lessons would continue, that there would be more moments of fear, frustration, and triumph. But she also knew that she was ready, that she had the courage, the determination, and the will to face whatever came her way. The ranch, with all its demands and beauty, had become a part of her life, and she was beginning to feel that she could truly belong here, in this vast, untamed corner of the Wild West. Days turned into weeks, and Clara began to feel more at home on the ranch. Each morning she woke with the sun, her body sore from the work, yet her spirit steadily growing stronger. The rhythms of ranch life were becoming familiar, the lowing of the cattle, the creak of the gates, the distant neighing of the horses. She had learned to anticipate Samuel's movements and instructions, understanding the silent communication that passed between them. Though the tension from their first misunderstanding still lingered slightly, it had faded, replaced by a cautious respect and a sense of shared purpose. Clara's confidence continued to grow, but so did the challenges. One morning, as she helped move the cattle from one pasture to another, a sudden gust of wind swept across the plains. Dust and dry leaves swirled around, making it difficult to see. The cattle became skittish, their anxious movements threatening to turn a routine task into chaos. Clara's heart raced. She remembered Samuel's words from weeks before. Cattle don't respond to hesitation. Be firm, even if you feel unsure inside. Taking a deep breath, she positioned herself carefully, guiding the cattle with steady, deliberate movements. Samuel was nearby, observing, but allowing her to take the lead. Clara felt the weight of responsibility, but also a surge of determination. Slowly she managed to calm the animals, guiding them safely into the new pasture. When the last cow had crossed, Samuel approached, his expression calm but approving. "You handled that well," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You're learning to think ahead, to stay calm when things get rough. That's what it takes out here." Clara felt a warm sense of pride. It was more than praise for her skill. It was acknowledgement that she had earned her place on the ranch. She nodded, silently thanking him, though she still struggled to fully express the mix of relief and pride she felt inside. The days that followed were filled with long hours of work, each task teaching her more about the land, the animals, and herself. She repaired fences, fed the animals, cleaned the stables, and learned to handle the unpredictable nature of the ranch. With each success, she felt a deeper connection to the place and to Samuel, who, despite his firm demeanor, showed glimpses of patience and understanding. Clara began to see him not just as a strict employer, but as someone who had survived and thrived in this harsh environment, someone whose knowledge was a guide she could trust. Yet, it wasn't all easy. Clara struggled with moments of doubt, questioning her abilities and her place on the ranch. One afternoon, while helping mend a broken fence near the far edge of the property, a stubborn post refused to stay upright. She struggled for several minutes, frustration building with each failed attempt. Samuel walked over, ready to assist, but Clara held up her hand. "I can do it myself," she said firmly, her voice tinged with determination. Samuel studied her, a faint smile crossing his weathered face. "All right, but don't be afraid to ask for help if you truly need it." Clara nodded, focusing all her energy on the task. Slowly, methodically, she managed to secure the post, the fence finally standing straight and strong. She stepped back, breathing heavily, and felt a surge of accomplishment. Samuel watched silently, then nodded in approval. "You did it," he said simply. "That's the kind of persistence that makes a rancher." That evening, after the work was done, Clara sat outside the cabin, the cool night air brushing her cheeks. She thought about the day, the challenges, the successes, and the lessons learned. Life on the ranch was hard, but it was also rewarding in ways she had never imagined. She was beginning to understand the balance between strength and patience, independence and trust, courage and caution. Over the next few days, Clara and Samuel began to develop a deeper understanding of one another. Samuel was careful with his words and actions, aware of the boundaries Clara had set, and she, in turn, was learning to read his moods and intentions more accurately. There was a quiet, unspoken respect growing between them, a recognition that both were doing their best in a demanding environment. One morning, Clara noticed Samuel moving slower than usual. His face was pale and he seemed more fatigued than the long days of work should account for. Concerned, she approached him cautiously. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, her voice gentle. Samuel waved her off, trying to mask his discomfort. "I'm fine. Just a little tired, that's all." Clara wasn't convinced. She had observed him carefully for weeks and knew when he was truly off balance. She decided to keep an eye on him, helping with tasks quietly without drawing attention to her concern. The days continued, and Clara's skills on the ranch grew stronger. She rode horses with confidence, guided cattle without hesitation, and handled the chores efficiently. Her confidence inspired a subtle change in Samuel as well. He began to trust her judgment more, allowing her to take initiative while still offering guidance when needed. Their partnership, though still cautious, was becoming stronger, built on mutual respect and shared effort. One afternoon, as they were moving a herd of cattle, Clara noticed Samuel struggling to lift a particularly heavy gate. The memory of their earlier tension returned. She remembered the words she had spoken, the way he had respected her boundaries. She hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to step in or let him manage on his own. Samuel noticed her hesitation and stopped. "Clara," he said gently, "I can manage, but if you want to help, I won't stop you." Clara took a deep breath and stepped forward, offering support without overstepping. Together, they lifted the gate, each understanding the other's limits and strengths. The moment passed quietly, but it was significant, a subtle acknowledgement that their relationship had grown beyond initial tension into a cooperative and respectful partnership. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Clara felt a deep sense of connection to the ranch and to Samuel. She had learned that life here required not just physical strength, but emotional resilience, patience, and understanding. She realized that respect and trust were just as important as skill, and that every day offered a lesson in both. That evening, after the work was done and the animals were settled, Clara sat outside her cabin, reflecting on the past weeks. She had come to the ranch uncertain and nervous, unsure if she would survive the harsh conditions or earn Samuel's respect. Now, she felt a quiet pride in what she had accomplished, and a sense of belonging that she had not expected to find. Samuel approached quietly, standing a short distance away. He watched the sunset for a moment before speaking. "You've come a long way since you arrived, Clara. I can see your determination, your courage. Keep it up, and you'll do more than just survive here. You'll thrive." Clara smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." He nodded, then turned and walked back toward the barn, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts. She realized that the challenges of the ranch were far from over, but she felt ready to face them. Each day brought new lessons, new tests of skill and patience, and each day strengthened her resolve. As night fell, Clara lay in her cabin, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into darkness. The gentle rustle of leaves, the soft calls of animals, and the whisper of the wind reminded her that life here was constant, demanding, but full of quiet beauty. She thought about the bond she was forming with Samuel, a bond built on respect, trust, and shared effort. Clara knew that the days ahead would bring new challenges, moments of doubt, and perhaps even moments of fear. But she also knew that she had the strength, the skill, and the courage to face them. The ranch had become more than a place of work. It was a place of growth, discovery, and learning. And as she drifted off to sleep, Clara felt a quiet sense of readiness, knowing that she was becoming stronger, wiser, and more resilient with each passing day. The morning began like any other on the ranch, with the pale light of dawn spreading across the wide, open fields. Clara woke before the sun, as she had for weeks now, her body sore but her mind focused. She dressed quickly, pulling on her worn boots and brushing her hair back into a practical braid. Today, however, something felt different. The air was heavy with heat, and the wind carried a faint dryness that hinted at a long, challenging day. Clara shrugged off the unease, determined to face whatever the day would bring. Samuel was already outside, checking the fences along the northern boundary. His movements seemed slower than usual, and his face carried a pale, strained look that made Clara pause. She hesitated for a moment, recalling the weeks of learning to read his expressions and anticipate his needs. Something was wrong. "Good morning, sir," she called softly, approaching him. Samuel waved a hand, attempting a smile. "Morning, Clara. Let's get to the cattle today. There's work to be done." Clara nodded, but she kept a close watch on him. She noticed his uneven steps, the way he seemed to shift weight from one foot to the other as though fighting fatigue. She wanted to speak, to insist that he rest, but he waved her off, insisting that there was no time to delay. She followed, trying to mask her concern and focus on the tasks ahead. The morning was filled with the usual labor, guiding the cattle, mending fences, and checking water troughs. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its heat pressing down on the land. Clara worked diligently, trying to ignore the gnawing worry about Samuel's condition. But by midday, it became impossible to ignore. Samuel stumbled slightly as he moved toward a heavy gate, his hand gripping the post for support. "Sir, are you all right?" Clara asked, stepping closer. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice lacked its usual firmness. "Just tired." Clara's instincts screamed that it was more than fatigue. She had seen men collapse from the harsh sun, from exhaustion, and from pushing their bodies too far. But Samuel was stubborn, and she knew he would not admit to weakness easily. She stayed close, offering silent support, waiting for an opening to intervene. As they approached the far pasture to move the herd, the heat and exertion began to take their toll. Samuel's steps faltered again, and this time he didn't recover as quickly. He reached for the fence, then sank to the ground with a sudden, shocking collapse. Clara's heart leapt into her throat. Time seemed to freeze as she rushed to his side, kneeling beside him, checking his pulse and looking for signs of serious distress. "Sir, sir, can you hear me?" she called, her voice shaking but controlled. Samuel groaned faintly, and Clara felt a mix of relief and urgent concern. He was conscious, but clearly weak and disoriented. She realized that quick action was necessary to prevent a dangerous situation. Clara remembered the first aid skills she had learned years ago from her mother, who had insisted that every child should know the basics. She adjusted Samuel's position carefully, ensuring he was lying safely on his back, and lifted his hat to allow air to reach his face. She spoke softly, trying to keep him calm. "You're going to be all right, sir. Just stay still. I'll take care of you." Samuel's breathing was shallow but steady, and Clara could see the faint flush of heat on his cheeks. She fetched water from a nearby trough, wetting a cloth to dab his forehead and neck, trying to cool him down. Her hands moved with steady determination, guided by a mixture of fear and resolve. She realized in that moment that all her weeks of work and observation on the ranch had prepared her for this. She had learned not just to handle animals and tools, but to act decisively in moments of crisis. Clara scanned the surrounding area, considering her options. The ranch was vast, and getting help quickly would be a challenge. She knew she had to act independently until someone could arrive. Using her knowledge of the land, she decided to move Samuel carefully toward a shaded area beneath a large tree, where the sun's harsh rays would not continue to sap his strength. With careful, deliberate movements, she lifted and guided him, talking to him the entire time to keep him conscious and calm. After several tense minutes, Samuel was safely in the shade. Clara continued to cool him with the wet cloth, offering small sips of water when he was able. She kept a vigilant watch, noting his breathing, his pulse, and his color. Each passing moment was heavy with worry, yet she remained focused, refusing to give in to panic. She had learned that in critical moments, fear could be as dangerous as the crisis itself. Finally, Samuel's breathing began to stabilize and color returned to his face. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the sunlight. "Clara," he murmured, his voice weak. You saved me." Clara shook her head gently, refusing to let herself be swayed by emotion. "We saved you, sir. You just need to rest now. Don't try to get up yet." He nodded faintly, his pride still intact despite the circumstances. Clara helped him lie back comfortably and adjusted the cloth on his forehead. The intensity of the moment began to fade slightly, replaced by a quiet relief. She had faced her fears, acted decisively, and ensured the safety of the man who had become both her mentor and a figure of authority she respected deeply. As she settled beside him, Clara reflected on the lessons of the day. Life on the ranch was unpredictable, demanding, and often harsh, but it had also taught her courage, resilience, and the importance of observation and quick thinking. She realized that she had grown in ways she had never anticipated, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The experience of keeping Samuel safe had deepened her understanding of her own strength and the responsibilities that came with it. Hours passed, and Samuel gradually regained more of his strength. Clara remained vigilant, offering water, adjusting the wet cloth, and keeping him shaded. By the late afternoon, he was able to sit up, though still weak. He looked at Clara with a mixture of gratitude and humility. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said quietly. Clara smiled faintly, feeling a warm satisfaction in her chest. "You don't need to thank me, sir. We look out for each other here. That's what the ranch teaches us." Samuel nodded, clearly moved by her words. In that moment, a deeper bond formed between them, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Clara realized that their relationship had shifted from one of cautious distance to a genuine partnership. They had faced a crisis together, and both had emerged stronger for it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Clara helped Samuel back toward the main house. The walk was slow and careful, each step measured and deliberate. The animals were calm, sensing that the tension of the day had passed. The ranch seemed to settle into an evening quiet, as though acknowledging the trials and triumphs of its caretakers. That night, after ensuring Samuel was resting comfortably, Clara returned to her cabin. She sat outside for a while, letting the cool night air brush against her face, reflecting on the events of the day. She had faced fear, acted decisively, and helped someone she respected in a time of real danger. The experience had tested her in every way, yet it had also affirmed her abilities, her courage, and her determination. Clara realized that life on the ranch was about more than labor and survival. It was about trust, responsibility, and the quiet heroism of ordinary moments. Every task, every challenge, and every interaction shaped the people who lived here. She had grown stronger, not just in skill but in character, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. As she lay down to rest, Clara thought about Samuel, the ranch, and the lessons she had learned. She knew that the days ahead would bring new challenges, but she also knew that she was capable of facing them. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a place of growth, courage, and discovery. And as sleep took her, she felt a quiet confidence that she could meet whatever trials came her way, just as she had today. The days following Samuel's collapse were filled with careful attention and quiet reflection. Clara had taken it upon herself to help him recover, bringing water, tending to his needs, and assisting with lighter chores around the ranch while he regained his strength. Samuel, though still stubborn and unwilling to admit complete vulnerability, gradually accepted her help. He realized, with a mixture of humility and gratitude, that Clara was not just an assistant on the ranch, but someone capable, strong, and reliable in ways he had never fully appreciated. The ranch itself seemed to settle into a calm rhythm once more. The animals moved about the fields with ease, the fences stood sturdy, and the sun continued to rise and set over the rolling plains. Clara's confidence had grown even stronger after the recent events. She no longer doubted her abilities or questioned her place on the ranch. Each day, she demonstrated skill, patience, and determination, earning Samuel's respect and the quiet admiration of the few ranch hands who worked alongside her. Samuel returned to his usual routine slowly, taking care not to overexert himself. Clara made sure to stay nearby, not because she doubted him, but because she had learned to recognize the subtleties of human vulnerability. During the mornings, they worked side by side, checking fences, guiding the cattle, and planning tasks for the day. There was a new ease in their partnership, a silent understanding that neither would overstep the other's boundaries while still relying on each other when needed. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows over the pasture, Samuel called Clara over. He leaned on a fence post, his face relaxed but thoughtful. "Clara, I've been thinking," he began, his voice quiet yet firm. "You've grown a lot since you arrived, not just in skill but in character. You've shown courage, patience, and judgment. The ranch wouldn't be the same without you." Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was the first time Samuel had praised her so openly, without restraint. She lowered her eyes modestly, brushing a hand over her dusty skirt. "Thank you, sir." I just wanted to do my best." Samuel nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "And you have. Life out here is hard, but you've shown that you can face it without fear. That's rare. I respect that more than I can say." Their shared silence was comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding that had grown over the weeks. Clara realized that the relationship between them had transformed from one of tension and caution into one of mutual trust and respect. The incident with Samuel's collapse had been a turning point, teaching them both valuable lessons about strength, responsibility, and reliance on one another. Over the following weeks, life on the ranch returned to its steady rhythm. Clara continued to perform her duties with diligence, while Samuel observed with quiet approval. The work remained hard and demanding, but Clara no longer felt overwhelmed. She had become skilled at reading the animals, anticipating Samuel's instructions, and handling the unpredictable challenges of ranch life. Each day was a new lesson, and each challenge strengthened her resilience. One morning, Clara noticed a small group of children from the nearby town gathering near the edge of the ranch. They watched curiously as she and Samuel guided a herd of cattle. Clara approached them with a friendly smile, understanding that the ranch was not just a place of work, but also a part of the wider community. She explained the tasks they were performing, showed them how the animals were cared for, and even allowed a few of them to help in small, safe ways. The children's laughter and curiosity brought a sense of lightness to the ranch, reminding Clara of the simple joys that life could offer even amidst hard work. Samuel watched quietly from a distance, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He had always valued hard work, discipline, and resilience, but he now saw the importance of teaching others, of sharing knowledge, and of finding joy in the small victories. Clara's presence had brought not just capable hands, but also a renewed perspective on life for him. As the seasons changed, the ranch faced its usual challenges: sudden storms, unpredictable weather, and the constant demand of tending to the animals. Clara handled these challenges with growing confidence, often taking the lead in tasks that would have seemed impossible when she first arrived. Samuel continued to mentor her, offering advice and guidance, but he also allowed her independence, recognizing her ability to make sound decisions. Their partnership had become seamless, built on a foundation of trust, respect, and shared experience. One crisp autumn evening, after a long day of work, Clara and Samuel stood together on a hill overlooking the ranch. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink, orange, and gold. The cattle grazed quietly in the distance, the horses rested in their pens, and the wind carried the faint scent of dry grass and earth. Clara felt a sense of peace and accomplishment that she had never known before. "You've done well, Clara," Samuel said quietly, his voice carrying a mix of pride and gratitude. "Not just in your work, but in the way you've carried yourself, faced challenges, and handled responsibilities. You've become more than an assistant. You're part of this ranch now." Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Thank you, sir. I've learned so much here, more than I could have imagined." Samuel nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon one last time before turning to her. "Remember, life on the ranch isn't always easy. There will be hard days, unexpected trials, and moments when you feel unsure, but you've proven that you can handle it, and that's what matters most." Clara felt a quiet determination settle over her. She knew that the road ahead would continue to bring challenges, but she was ready. The ranch had taught her courage, resilience, and the importance of trust. She had faced fear, taken responsibility, and discovered her own strength. And in the process, she had formed a bond with Samuel that went beyond employer and assistant. It was a connection built on respect, shared experiences, and the lessons learned together. As the days turned into months, Clara continued to thrive on the ranch. She became a trusted partner in managing the land, tending to the animals, and ensuring that the ranch operated smoothly. Samuel relied on her judgment and valued her insights, often seeking her opinion on decisions that affected the daily operations. Their relationship remained grounded in mutual respect, strengthened by the challenges they had faced and the trust they had built. The ranch itself flourished under their combined efforts. Fences were sturdy, animals were healthy, and the land was well cared for. Clara's presence brought energy, dedication, and a sense of continuity that Samuel appreciated deeply. Together, they faced the trials of the Wild West with determination, resourcefulness, and a quiet confidence that only came from shared experience. One evening, as Clara sat outside her cabin watching the sun set, she reflected on her journey. She had arrived at the ranch uncertain, nervous, and unsure of her place in the world. She had faced challenges, moments of fear, and the unknown. But she had also experienced triumph, growth, and the satisfaction of overcoming obstacles. She had discovered her own strength, learned the value of trust and respect, and found a sense of belonging that she had never expected. Samuel approached quietly, standing beside her without a word. He looked out over the fields, then down at Clara with a rare softness in his eyes. "You've changed this place," he said quietly. "And in the process, you've changed yourself too. Never forget that." Clara nodded, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. "I won't, sir. I've learned more than I could have imagined, and I'll carry these lessons with me for the rest of my life." They stood together in silence for a while, watching the sun sink below the horizon, the ranch bathed in the warm glow of evening. The cattle moved peacefully in the distance, the horses rested in their pens, and the wind whispered through the fields. It was a moment of calm, a moment of reflection, and a moment of quiet triumph. Clara realized that life on the ranch was more than hard work. It was a journey of growth, resilience, and discovery. She had faced fear, embraced responsibility, and found courage she didn't know she possessed. And in the process, she had formed a bond with Samuel that was unshakable, built on mutual respect, shared challenges, and the lessons learned together. As night fell and stars appeared in the sky, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The ranch, with all its challenges and beauty, had become a home, a place where she had proven herself, discovered her strength, and forged lasting connections. She knew that the days ahead would bring new trials, but she also knew that she was ready. Clara smiled quietly, feeling the cool night air on her face and the satisfaction of a journey completed. The Wild West was vast, unpredictable, and demanding, but it had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And as she looked across the fields, watching the ranch settle into the quiet of night, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment, belonging, and hope for the future.